The late-night train screeched through the quiet darkness, its dim lights gliding past fogged-up windows. The passengers were sparse, each lost in their own world. In a corner of the first-class cabin, Ryan Carter, a successful businessman, sat with his legs crossed, his Armani suit pristine, and a shimmering Patek Philippe watch on his wrist. He had just closed a multi-million-dollar deal, but there was no satisfaction in his deep blue eyes, only an odd emptiness. Suddenly, the door of the compartment creaked open. A frail old man, dark-skinned, with disheveled hair and beard, his cloudy eyes fixed on him, held a dented tin cup in his hand and spoke in a hoarse voice. "Could you help me, sir?" Ryan looked up. His gaze froze. There was something strange, as if he had met this old man somewhere before. But that moment was quickly overtaken by reason. He turned away, his voice cold. "Sorry, I don't have any change." Just as Ryan was about to lower his head and return to his work, the old man spoke again. But this time his tone was completely different, sharper. "What about memories? Do you still have them, Ryan Carter?" Ryan's heart stopped. How did he know his name? He looked up sharply, his eyes filled with caution. "Who are you?" The old man merely smiled faintly. "Have you forgotten? Sometimes the past doesn't die. It just waits to return." At that moment, the train shook slightly, the lights in the compartment flickered, then blackout. In the dim darkness, the old man's voice echoed, as if coming from a distant place in the past. Back then, in the sun-scorched land of Africa, there was a white boy lost in a village under attack. And there was a man who risked his life to save him from the fiery storm. Those words pierced Ryan's mind like a knife. His breath became rapid. A memory that he had locked away for so long suddenly came to life. The lights flickered back on. Ryan stared at the old man before him, his eyes wide, his hands trembling. "No, it can't be." The old man slowly rolled up his sleeve, revealing a long scar on his arm, the very wound Ryan had seen in his memory. "The boy. I am Mosi." Ryan froze, his mind blank. His breath became shallow. The man from that time, the one who bled to save him, was standing here, now nothing but a homeless wanderer. Hot tears spilled down Ryan's cold face. He fell to his knees. "Mosi, I've been searching for you all these years. I owe you my life." But the old man only smiled faintly. "I never needed you to repay me. Just live and keep your heart." In that moment, everything inside Ryan shattered. The years spent chasing after wealth and power. He finally realized, true value isn't in what you own, but in what you give. The train stopped at the final station. When Ryan turned back, Mosi had vanished. He hurriedly asked the station guard, "Where's the old man, the dark-skinned one?" The station guard furrowed his brow. "What old man? This cabin has only had you from the start of the journey." Ryan stood frozen. The night wind blew through, carrying a whisper. "Live worthy." A month later, the newspapers were filled with the news. Ryan Carter, the young CEO, donates 50% of his fortune to establish the Mosi Fund to help children in Africa. He declared, "I can't change the past, but I will change the future." Returning from the fateful night train journey, Ryan Carter sank into an indescribable state of unease. The image of the old man Mosi, his hoarse voice, and the whisper, "Live worthy," kept echoing in his ears, haunting his mind without end. He wondered, was that night real? Or was it all just a dream, an illusion created by his weary mind? He tried to find any trace of Mosi's presence on that night train. He contacted station staff, requested to extract security camera footage, even secretly inquired about the passengers on that night's trip. All to no avail. No one remembered a frail, dark-skinned old man, and there was no footage capturing his presence. The station guard still insisted that the first-class cabin that night had only Ryan. Doubt gradually crept into Ryan's mind, gnawing away at the trust he had just begun to feel. Maybe he had imagined it all? Perhaps his guilt and remorse about the past had conjured up a ghost to remind him? He tried to push these thoughts away, burying himself in work and diving into new business projects. But the more he tried to avoid it, the clearer Mosi's image became, and the old man's words grew louder in his mind. Ryan's decision to establish the Mosi Fund sent shockwaves through the financial world. Giving up half of his vast fortune, he was hailed as an awakened philanthropist, a CEO for the community. But behind the praise, undercurrents began to rise. A group of major shareholders from Carter Industries expressed their dissatisfaction. They believed Ryan had acted impulsively, severely harming the company's interests and disrupting the carefully laid-out development plans. Rumors and criticism spread quickly through the business world, followed by fluctuations in stock prices and internal instability within the company. Even more alarming, Ryan began receiving anonymous threats, silent phone calls late at night, warning letters sent to his office. Who was behind these covert forces? Was it simply disgruntled shareholders? Or was there a darker, more sinister plot at play? Despite all the pressure and threats, Ryan remained steadfast in the path he had chosen. He poured all his energy and finances into building and expanding the fund, personally flying to Africa to survey the land, meet the local people, and plan the construction of schools, hospitals, and community support projects. But upon stepping onto the dry African soil, he discovered some disturbing things. Several charity projects by other organizations were mysteriously sabotaged, funding was blocked, and support activities were hindered by invisible forces. It seemed as though someone was deliberately trying to stop all efforts to help the children and people of Africa, and his Mosi Fund had become a thorn in their side. On a stormy, rainy night in Africa, as Ryan and his colleagues were working at a remote orphanage, amid the howling wind and thunderous lightning, he saw Mosi again. He appeared briefly through the fogged-up window, his frail figure flickering in the darkness like an illusion. Before Ryan could regain his composure, Mosi vanished into the night. But this time, he didn't remain silent. His hoarse, deep voice echoed through the howling wind, like a warning from the past. You're going too far. Danger is very close. Be careful of those you trust. Mosi's warning sent a chill down Ryan's spine. What danger was lurking? Those he trusted? Who did Mosi mean? He began to reassess all the relationships around him, from his closest assistant, longtime business partners, to the members of the fund's board. He realized there were too many familiar faces around him. But could any of them be hiding a dark secret, a dangerous conspiracy? Ryan quietly began an investigation, following the faintest clues, and gradually uncovered a terrifying truth. It turned out that a massive multinational corporation was secretly conducting illegal natural resource extraction activities in Africa, devastating the environment, exploiting the local people, and causing catastrophic economic, social, and environmental consequences. The Mosi Fund, with its mission to protect children and promote sustainable community development, had unintentionally become an obstacle to their dark agenda. And the mastermind behind the ruthless corporation, the one trying to destroy the Mosi Fund at all costs, was none other than Daniel, Ryan's closest friend, the one who had grown up with him, built their careers together, and always seemed to wholeheartedly support his charity fund. The betrayal of his best friend was like a deadly stab straight to Ryan's heart, shattering all the trust and values he had carefully nurtured. In the final confrontation, Ryan Carter stood at the darkest crossroads of his life. Facing Daniel, his lifelong friend, who had now become his mortal enemy, Ryan could clearly feel the internal struggle. The years of friendship, the beautiful childhood memories, the dreams they shared in building their careers, all of it played out like a slow-motion film, pulling him away from the edge of betrayal. But his reason and conscience told him that he could not compromise with evil, that he could not turn a blind eye to Daniel's ruthless actions. Why Daniel? Why him? Ryan spoke, his voice choked, mixed with disappointment and pain. Daniel stood there, maintaining his artificial calm demeanor, but his eyes betrayed a hint of wavering. Don't pretend to be a saint, Ryan. This is how the world works. The strong dominate the weak, and those with money have power. Do you really think your Mosi Fund will change anything? It's just a childish fantasy. Meaningless? Daniel, you're destroying an entire land, ruining the lives of thousands of people for your insatiable greed. Have you forgotten? We once dreamed of a better world, a world where everyone could live happily and justly. Ryan snapped, rage rising in his chest. Daniel scoffed. Naive. Those were just the fanciful dreams of youth. Wake up, Ryan. This is the real world. Either you trample on others to climb to the top, or you get crushed in the mud. I just chose the stronger way. But not like this, Daniel. Not by selling out your conscience and morals. Ryan shouted, unable to contain his emotions. He knew that this conversation would not change Daniel. Ambition and greed had taken root deep within his friend's soul, turning him into a different kind of monster. Ryan understood that his only option was to expose the truth, to reveal Daniel and the Carter Industries Corporation's true face to the public. He began secretly gathering evidence, searching for documents and witnesses who could testify to Daniel's criminal actions. He knew that this path would be fraught with danger, and it could even threaten his life. But there was no turning back. His promise to Mosi, his responsibility to the Mosi Fund, and his conscience urged him to see it through. Ryan was not alone. He still had loyal colleagues in the Mosi Fund, people who could not tolerate injustice and were ready to fight for what was right. Together, they meticulously planned, overcoming the strict controls of Carter Industries, collecting each piece of evidence, and exposing the harsh truth. Daniel was no fool. He quickly realized the change in Ryan, the silent resistance growing within the corporation. He ordered tighter controls, increased security forces, and did everything he could to stop Ryan and his colleagues. Intense chases and high-stakes battles of wits became a daily occurrence. Ryan and his team had to face carefully laid traps and vicious attacks from Daniel's side. On a dark night, as Ryan was secretly handing over crucial documents to an investigative journalist, he was ambushed by Daniel's henchmen. A breathless chase ensued through the empty streets. Ryan was injured, but he managed to escape, safeguarding the key evidence. After overcoming numerous hardships and dangers, Ryan finally gathered enough proof to expose Daniel and Carter Industries' crimes. He decided to release everything to the media and send the complaint files to international organizations and authorities. When the truth was revealed, a media storm erupted. Public outrage erupted over Carter Industries' brutal actions. Investors fled, and stock prices plummeted. International organizations began investigations, putting pressure on governments to take appropriate action. Daniel was arrested, facing the threat of prison and the total collapse of the empire he had spent years building. His career, reputation, and power all turned to dust. In the cold prison cell, Daniel finally realized the price he had to pay for his greed and betrayal. As for Ryan, after exposing Daniel's crimes, he didn't feel triumphant or victorious. Deep inside, he still carried the sadness and loss of a broken friendship. But he knew he had done the right thing. He had chosen what was right, protected the Mosi Fund, and fulfilled his promise to the man who had saved his life years ago. The Mosi Fund continued to grow in strength, expanding its scale and influence, helping thousands of African children lead better lives. Ryan gave up all his positions in Carter Industries, dedicating all his time and energy to the charity. He found the true meaning of life not in wealth and power, but in sharing and compassion. During one of his trips back to Africa, Ryan visited the village where Mosi had saved his life. He met the local people again and listened to their stories about Mosi, about his noble life and courage. Ryan understood that Mosi was not just a benefactor, but also a symbol of selflessness and high sacrifice spirit. In the end, Ryan found the truth about Mosi. He was not a ghost, nor an illusion. Mosi was a real man, flesh and blood, an ordinary yet great man. Perhaps, after that night on the train, Mosi had truly disappeared, leaving this world. But his spirit and legacy lived on in Ryan's heart, continuing to guide and protect him on his charity journey ahead. The winds of Africa still blew, carrying the scent of the earth and stories of bravery and humanity. Ryan Carter, once a successful businessman with a cold heart, had become a man who lived fully with his heart, a man who lived worthy of the grace Mosi had given him. He had changed the future, not only for himself, but also for thousands of African children, writing a story of awakening, compassion, and the power of kindness. There are still many touching stories waiting for you. Don't forget like and subscribe to the channel to follow.